In Revelation 12, we see a dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. But in Revelation 13, we see a beast, and it also has 7 heads and 10 horns. And while I believe the 10 horns on the dragon and the beast refer to the same entities, Revelation reveals there are subtle differences in the way they are portrayed between both of these chapters. The questions that we're going to answer today is, who are these 10 kings in the book of Revelation? And why are there differences in the way that they are portrayed? And we're going to answer those questions and many more right now. Remembering that heads represents governments and horns represents the kings who ruled over those governments, I want you to see the dragon in Revelation 12 and the beast in Revelation 13 as 2 references to Satan's kingdom. However, what you must understand is that these 2 references are focusing on different aspects of Satan's kingdom. Now, in Revelation chapter 12, we see a dragon. This dragon represents Satan, but it also represents Rome beginning in its pagan phase. We also see that this dragon had 7 heads and 10 horns. And those 7 heads represents the complete government of Satan from beginning to end. But what I want you to notice here is that the 7 heads in Revelation 12 have 7 crowns. Crowns represents power. So by the mere fact that these heads are representative of governments, it makes sense that these 7 heads would have crowns upon them. However, the real question that we must answer today is, why are the 10 horns without crowns? You see, if the 10 horns represents the 10 kingships that ruled over the first 5 heads or the first 5 governments, why would they here in Revelation 12 be crownless upon the dragon? Now, you may not know this yet, but what you must understand is that Revelation chapter 17 provides context for Revelation chapter 12 and Revelation chapter 13. So when we see Revelation 12 and we see that these 10 horns are without crowns, we turn to Revelation chapter 17 to find out why, to find out some context as to why these 10 horns are without crowns. And notice what verse 12 says. It says, the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet. Now, in order to understand that, what I want you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I want you to imagine that you are a king, or at least you call yourself a king. However, as a king, you discover that you have no kingdom. Now, let me ask you a question. Is a king without a kingdom really a king? Exactly. The reason why Revelation chapter 12 presents these 10 horns as crownless is because at the time of John, the 10 kings had not yet received a kingdom, and kings without a kingdom aren't really kings. Thus, there's no crowns. Now, we have to ask the question, the kings or the 10 horns that ruled prior to the Roman Empire, we have to ask the question, did those kings have kingdoms? The answer is yes. But what you must understand is that at the time of the Roman Empire, at the time of John the Revelator, those 10 kingships had all been defeated. The pharaohs were defeated by the Assyrian kings, who were defeated by Nebuchadnezzar's lineage, whose posterity was defeated by the Median princes, who were later defeated by the Persian princes, which were conquered by Alexander the Great, whose kingdom was divided by 4 monarchies, whose territories were ultimately all taken over by the Roman Empire. So we can understand that these 10 future kings at the time of the Roman Empire had not yet received their kingdoms because Rome at the time of John was ruling a majority of the known world. This reveals to us that the 10 kings or the 10 horns in Revelation are going to be 10 kingships that are ruling at the end of the world. And thus we understand why the 10 crowns were missing from the 10 horns at the time of John the Revelator. Now, in Revelation 13, we see a beast. And this beast also represents the Roman Empire, but it actually begins around the time of the second phase of the Roman Empire, which is the papal phase. And now I want you to look closely at this beast in Revelation 13, and we notice again that we see 7 heads and 10 horns. But now I want you to look a little closer, and you're going to notice that the 10 horns have 10 crowns. Now, we don't need to guess why the 10 horns have 10 crowns. Revelation 17 reveals to us exactly the reason why. Notice what Revelation 17:12 says regarding these 10 kings in the future. But they receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. And now we understand why Revelation 13 reveals these 10 horns with 10 crowns. You must understand that under the dispensation of the beast, the era of the beast, we must understand that the 10 horns continue all the way until the end of the world. And it is under this era that the 10 horns rise up and obtain power with the world's final superpower, also known as the beast of the apocalypse. But now, what about the heads in Revelation chapter 13? Notice that the heads in Revelation 13 no longer have crowns, but they now have blasphemy upon them. And what's the rule that I gave you? Revelation 17 provides context for parts of Revelation 12 and 13. So now if we go to Revelation 17, we discover why the heads now have blasphemy upon them. Notice what verse number 3 says. It says, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet colored beast." And notice what it says next, "full of names of" what? What's that next word? Blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And now we can see why the heads, those 7 heads that had crowns in Revelation chapter 12, are omitted. Those crowns are omitted in Revelation 13, and in their place is blasphemy. It is because the beast in Revelation 13 is the beast that ushers in the harlot. Now, you must understand that the harlot has been present throughout history and has been present in Satan's other governments. But here in Revelation 13, the harlot is present, but it is now mixed with Christianity, and that's why blasphemy is now invoked. In essence, Satan has always, from the beginning, tried to get God's people to worship him or to involve themselves in heathen idolatry. The Egyptians almost had them, but God made them leave. Nebuchadnezzar tried, but God showed up in the fire. Darius was forced, but God shut the lion's mouth. For 3 years, Antiochus Epiphanes had them, but God brought them back. What I'm saying to you is that for centuries upon centuries, Satan has always tried to get God's people to worship him through pagan idolatry. And he finally achieved a level of success here in Revelation 13 with the beast under the papal Roman Empire, who mixed heathen traditions with Christian doctrines. And what you must understand is that this harlot, who began under the dispensation of the beast, continues all the way until the end of the world. But what you must understand is that the harlot in the last days is a worldwide union, a worldwide religion who gets the kings of the world to embrace her. Now, Ellen White provides context on this idea when she says, "These have one mind. There will be a universal bond of union, one great harmony, a confederacy of Satan's forces, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Thus is manifested the same arbitrary oppressive power against religious liberty, freedom to worship God according to the dictates of conscience, as was manifested by the papacy when in the past it persecuted those who dared to refuse to conform with the religious rites and ceremony of Romanism." Now, notice that Ellen White is not suggesting to us that these 10 kings are representative of 10 Germanic tribes that ruled in the Dark Ages. She is telling us that these 10 kings are 10 kingships that will rise up at the end of the world. And when these kings rise up, they will become part of a worldwide union. And this worldwide union is precipitated by 3 main powers. And those 3 powers are the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. In other words, pagan Rome, papal Rome, and the United States of America. But now we have to ask the question, how do these 10 horns fit into this end time scenario? And in order to understand this, you have to look at a map of the old world. Notice where the Roman Empire was located. And now notice where the 10 horns were located. Now, what you must see is that Rome was west of the 10 kings. And if Rome was west of the 10 kings, then that means the 10 kings were east of Rome. And if the 10 kings were east of the Roman Empire, then you and I can safely come to the conclusion that the 10 kings of the end times are also known as the kings of the East. Yes, and regarding these 10 kings, Revelation 16:12 says, "And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the East might be prepared." Now, ladies and gentlemen, you must understand the correlation to the historical record. You see, history reveals that the way that Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon fell is because the kings of the Medes and the Persians diverted the Euphrates, which essentially dried up the river, and it allowed them to walk on the riverbed into the Babylonian Empire and conquer it. And thus you must understand that at the end of the world, spiritual Babylon falls once we understand the spiritual Euphrates gets dried up. This means that once earthly support dries up for spiritual Babylon and its false religion, it is then that the 10 kings of the East realize that they've been deceived, and it makes a way for these kings of the East. Makes a way for them to do what? To turn against the harlot system. And I believe Ellen White possibly alludes to this revolt in the following excerpt. She says, "The people see that they've been deluded. They eagerly accuse one another of having led them to destruction, but all unite in heaping their bitterest condemnation upon the ministers. Unfaithful pastors have prophesied smooth things. They have led their hearers to make void the law of God and to persecute those who would keep it holy. Now, in their despair, these teachers confess before the world their work of deception. The multitudes are filled with fury. 'We are lost,' they cry, 'and you are the cause of our ruin.' And they turn upon the false watchmen. The very ones that once admired them most will pronounce the most dreadful curses upon them. The very hands that once crowned them with laurels will be raised for their destruction. The swords which were to slay God's people are now employed to destroy their enemies. Everywhere there was strife and bloodshed." And this is why Revelation 17:16 says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire." Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. The 10 kings, or the kings of the East, rise up in the final days to support the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And they join them in persecuting God's people, but they find out soon enough that they've been deceived. And ultimately, they turn against this worldwide religious system at the end of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, this is not 10 European nations. These are 10 kings that will arise. And maybe they're already here and have a level of sovereignty, but they arise and they have 1 hour with the beast. In our next and final study, we're going to go back to the book of Daniel, but we're going to look at Daniel chapter 2, which reveals the final destruction and eradication of these 10 horns. And what I want you to do is subscribe to this channel so you don't miss it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Seventh-day Adventist Watchman, and you've just learned who the 10 horns are in the book of Revelation.